Hey guys, tonight we're digging through the linen-scented shadows of a Roman birth room. Just you, a nervous husband pacing outside, and a midwife's toolkit that looks more like something from a battlefield than a nursery. You can almost feel the flicker of oil lamps casting soft orange light across curved walls. The air is heavy with crushed herbs and the slightly metallic tang of blood mixed with warm olive oil. On a low wooden table lies the midwife's kit, bronze hooks gleaming dully, little flasks of medicinal wine stoppered with wax, thread spools wrapped around fishbone, and a bowl of boiled wool compresses still steaming faintly in the corner. Somehow, it all smells like confidence and old laurel leaves. You're the midwife tonight, and you probably won't survive this job for more than a few decades if you're lucky. Between the fevers, the gossip, and the complete absence of latex gloves, let's just say it's not exactly a stress-free gig. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel beside the birthing couch, linen skirts hitched up slightly, toolkit open. The laboring woman is sweating through her second hour of contractions, and her mother keeps asking whether she should fetch the priest or the neighbor with the garlic necklace. You ignore both. First, you reach for the bronze retractor, a two-pronged tool with rounded edges, not sharp, just functional, mostly used to check positioning and, occasionally, nudge things back into alignment when nature gets stubborn. Next, you uncork a tiny ceramic bottle, olive oil, thick and golden, infused with chamomile and thyme. You pour a little onto your hands and rub it between your palms until they gleam. Not for cooking, though, honestly. It does smell fantastic, but for massaging the abdomen, easing skin, reducing friction. And because Roman medicine believed in warming the womb more than measuring anything precisely, the toolkit doesn't look like much. A few blunt blades, tweezers, needles made from bone or bronze, often too thick for comfort, a sponge soaked in vinegar for washing up, which stings even your imagination, and strips of linen, always linen cut and cleaned and boiled in salt water, then folded with almost religious reverence. There's also a small bronze scoop used for, well, let's just call it material relocation. It's not elegant, but neither is birth. If you're lucky, you'll need it to clear mucus. If you're not, you'll need it to remove something more tragic. You carry a little wax tablet in your pouch, tucked next to a few charms. It's not for notes, it's for sketching diagrams when you teach, or recording a name in case the father is too emotional to speak, which happens more often than you'd think. Historians still argue whether these toolkits were standardized or wildly improvised, depending on region and class. There's some evidence that wealthy Roman midwives in port cities had access to imported instruments, silver-tipped clamps, glass jars from Alexandria, even an ivory wand for inspecting dilation. But out here, where you are tonight, it's the basics, things that can be boiled, reused, or buried discreetly. And there's always the knife, not the big surgical one, not unless things go very wrong. Just a small, flat-bladed bronze cutter used to sever the umbilical cord. It's dull now, so you rub it against the whetstone hidden in your belt pouch. You don't want to fumble with this later, when timing is everything. In the corner of your toolkit is a sealed wooden box. Inside, dried rose petals, crushed coriander, and a pinch of saffron, not for flavor, but for mood. Roman midwives often used scent as a psychological tool, easing the air with familiar fragrances while muttering verses to Lucina, goddess of childbirth, science, comfort. Absolutely. One more item, a simple iron ring wrapped in wool. You slip it onto your finger before every birth. Not for luck, not even for ritual. Just because the first woman who gave it to you said, "It saved my child," and you've never had the heart to take it off. Tonight, the baby isn't here yet, but everything's in place. The stool, the warm towels, the fire lit just enough to keep the water steaming. And you, crouched beside your kit, knowing that the tools you carry might deliver life or hold it in your hands for only a moment before letting go. Still, you show up every time. You glance toward the small fire pit in the corner of the room. It's been burning slow for hours now. More smoke than flame, fed with dried laurel leaves and olive twigs. The scent is sharp and medicinal, laced with something almost spicy. You toss another handful in, and it flares briefly, then simmers back into a low, oily smolder. It isn't just for warmth. It's for the gods, the mother, the child, the air. You've learned that even if laurel smoke doesn't cure fever, it calms nerves or, at the very least, masks the scent of fear and bodily effort. The woman's moaning now, in a deep, rhythmic way that tells you she's getting close. You slide your hands under the stool wooden, short and curved, almost like a modern toilet seat, balanced on 3 stubby legs and adjusted slightly. She'll sit on that soon, knees pulled up, held by her sister and her aunt, both wide-eyed, but trying to be brave. You give them a nod. Then you reach into your pouch and pull out a small silver medallion. It's stamped with the image of Lucina, goddess of light and childbirth. Her arms outstretched. You hold it up to the light. Let it catch a glint. Then hang it beside the doorway. That's just for show. The real charm is still hidden in your toolkit, a little lump of beeswax molded around a grain of barley, sealed with a thread of red wool. You've only used it twice, and both times were close calls. The husband peeks in again, holding a little vial of wine, trembling more than the mother. You take the wine, give him a look that says, "Stay out unless invited," and pour a splash into your copper basin. You're not drinking it. You're using it to anoint the belly, a local custom in this district. The wine is spiced with rue and a trace of myrrh. The smell is strangely comforting, if a little musty. At your hip, a bundle of dried herbs clinks together softly. You've tied them in groups, mint to rub on the gums if the baby comes out sluggish, bay leaf for waving under the nose, and fennel stalks mostly for chewing while you wait. You pop one in your mouth now, helps with nerves, and you like the way it crunches between your molars. Historians still argue whether these rituals were truly medicinal or mostly psychological. There's no doubt that Rome mixed faith and medicine the way a baker mixes flour and ash, sometimes indistinguishably. You'd like to think it helps, but even when it doesn't, the performance of care still matters. There's a pause in the room. The laboring woman has gone quiet, staring at the ceiling beams with glassy eyes. You recognize that look. It's the space between waves. You kneel beside her, take her hand, and whisper the only line that ever works. Breathe like you're pushing open a heavy gate, one you'll walk through soon. You glance back at your tools laid out on a low-woven mat like sacred offerings. You double-check the linen wraps, folded neatly in a wooden bowl. You wet one and placed it gently across the woman's forehead. Her skin is hot, pulsing with effort. Then comes the chanting, not from you, from the woman's aunt, who starts humming an old lullaby, but in reverse. That's not a mistake. In this part of the city, it's believed that singing backward tricks evil spirits into leaving the room. You don't believe it, but you also don't stop her. Because right now, you'll take whatever backup the universe is willing to offer. The air thickens with anticipation. Someone stirs more coals. The laurel smoke twirls toward the ceiling again. You adjust the cloth under your knees. Time slips strangely in these moments, as if the gods are waiting to see if you'll get it right. And tucked deep in your pouch, wrapped in lambskin, is a tiny clay figure, a woman bent forward, hands on her thighs, mouth wide in silent scream. It's older than anything else you carry. You don't know who made it, but you've held it in your fist during the worst births. And tonight, as the contractions quicken, you slip your hand around it again. Not for strength, just for steadiness. You slide the birthing stool closer. It creaks under your hand. The wood worn smooth from years of use and quick repairs. It's not much to look at, just a curved seat with a wide crescent-shaped cutout and 3 uneven legs. But it's the throne for this ancient performance. There are no cushions, no straps, just a firm place to bear down and hope your bones hold together. The stool's design is older than the Republic, Etruscan, maybe even older than that. Historians still argue whether it was ever standardized or if each midwife used her own handmade version. Yours is passed down, a gift from a retired matrona who said it had survived 19 births, 4 near misses, and 1 goat that wouldn't leave the room. Tonight, it's number 20. The woman grips your arms as she moves to the stool. You brace her, keeping your back firm and your tone softer than silk. You guide her into place. Legs spread, feet planted on warm tiles. Her face is flushed. Her breathing scattered and panicked needs rhythm. So you start humming. A slow, deliberate lullaby your own mentor used. One beat for each breath. Meanwhile, you tuck the support cushions behind her back, not for comfort, but for leverage. Roman birth isn't about lying back, it's about bearing down. The stool makes gravity an accomplice, not an obstacle. That open crescent in the seat, it's where you crouch. Yes, under it, close enough to catch, soothe, or intervene. You glance at the ground. There's a slight slope in the floor leading to a drain, practical Roman plumbing. Always one step ahead of the mess. A woven cloth has been laid beneath the stool to catch whatever arrives. It's already stained from earlier blood. Meconium, sweat. You switch it out for a clean one. Because no matter how many times you've done this, you still believe the baby deserves a fresh landing. The woman screams again. A low, guttural sound that rises from somewhere deeper than her lungs. You hold her knees, press your forehead gently against hers, and remind her this stool isn't holding you up. You are. She nods. Once, a single tear rolls down her cheek and disappears into the soaked cloth on her shoulder. You reach for your compress cloths, dipped earlier in warm wine and myrtle oil. You press one against her abdomen, another under her thighs. The scent is comforting and pungent, like walking into a temple's inner room. A space between sacred and sweaty. There's a knock at the door. You ignore it. Someone's always late to the miracle. The mother shifts, groans, and you check. The crown is coming. Hair, dark, wet, and trembling. You whisper thanks to whatever's listening and place your hands steady, practiced, palms open. You don't rush. That's the mistake of the young. You breathe with her, and when she exhales, you catch. In your lap, a baby slides out, slick and silent, still attached, still folded like a question mark. You cradle it, your own breath caught in your throat. No cry yet. You grab a linen strip and rub gently but firmly. The baby's skin turns from bluish to flushed. A single, sharp cry pierces the thick air, and someone in the room starts sobbing. Maybe the sister, maybe you. It's hard to tell. Now comes the cord. You reach for your small bronze knife, its edge warmed over the fire earlier. You tie the cord in two places with wool thread, then slice clean between them. You catch the blood in a shallow bowl. To be buried later with a few herbs, superstition demands it. If not, you risk drawing foxes, spirits, or worse, jealous neighbors. The baby is placed on the mother's chest, skin to skin. Her hand clutches the child as if afraid he'll slip away, and still, the work isn't done. There's the placenta to manage, the tearing to assess, the first bath to prepare. But for this single moment, on this creaky stool, beneath this smoky roof, there is breath, crying, life. You exhale for the first time in 10 minutes. Then you stand up slowly, your knees cracking like bad pottery, and reach for another clean cloth. The stool creaks again behind you, emptied but still sacred. You don't get to rest yet. The baby may be crying and pink, but your eyes shift instinctively to the woman's abdomen. One hand still on the child, the other back to work, because this is the moment things can tip from triumph to terror without warning. You gently palpate her stomach. The placenta is still inside. You wait for a contraction, a little one. It doesn't come, so you nod toward the sister to fetch the oxytocic tea, a mixture of pennyroyal, date pulp, and cumin. You prepared before sunset. It's bitter and grainy, but she drinks it between gasps, lips trembling. The baby is handed to the aunt, who cradles him awkwardly, like someone holding a scroll written in a language they don't speak. You wrap him in warmed linen and return your focus to what the toolkit doesn't advertise in its polished bronze. Complications. You reach for the obsidian blade, a last resort, smaller than the bronze one, sharper than it should be. Really, slices clean through tissue like cutting silk. You've only used it 3 times. You hope today isn't the 4th. Instead, you take the gentler path, a warm cloth placed low across the belly, 2 fingers of pressure, and the oldest command in the book. Push once more. She does. A whimper, then a gush. The placenta arrives, whole and heavy, steaming in the cool air. You examine it closely, checking for any fragments still inside. That's the part that can kill. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives understood the cause of puerperal fever, but you've seen what happens when a scrap of tissue is left behind. So you check twice, then a third time, then wrap the afterbirth in cloth and quietly set it aside for burning. You think the danger has passed, but then her breath catches. Her legs twitch. You look down. Blood. Too much. Too fast. You move like lightning, grabbing a poultice of wool and vinegar-soaked nettle leaves and press it between her thighs. It's not elegant. It's not certain, but it's what you have. You've seen this happen before. You whisper to her, stroke her hair, and tie a cord tight around her thigh, above the knee, not to stop blood, but to focus the body's effort away from the wound. It's a trick from your old teacher. Not always effective, but sometimes just enough. Someone's praying loudly now. Not you. You've already done your part. Instead, you do what Roman midwives do best. You talk her through it. You tell her stories of other women, other births, of the old lady down the street who had twins at 40 and is still chasing them with a broom. You joke lightly, respectfully, that if she survives this, her mother-in-law will never get the last word again. Her color comes back, slowly, inch by inch. The bleeding slows. You relax your grip just a little. You move on to cleanup wiping, folding, boiling everything that touched the floor. The obsidian blade is wiped clean and returned to its silk-lined wooden box, tucked beside your more mundane tools. You keep it hidden, not because of shame, but because you know what it means when that blade comes out. In the corner, the baby sleeps. The ant has stopped crying. Even the fire crackles more softly now, as if grateful for the quiet. And on the wall, someone, probably the child's older cousin, has drawn a tiny fish in charcoal, its eye too big, tail wagging like it's swimming through the soot-stained plaster. It's a folk belief in this neighborhood. A fish brings health to newborn lungs. No one knows why. Historians can't agree on its origin. Some say it's Etruscan. Others say Egyptian. You don't argue. You just leave it there. You pack your tools. Slow and deliberate. Each item wiped, wrapped, counted. You don't want to lose anything. Not because of cost, though. Bronze isn't cheap, but because everything in your toolkit is part of your rhythm, your confidence. And when your fingers brush over the obsidian blade again, you whisper the same thing you always do. Stay in the box. Friend, stay in the box tonight. The room smells different now. Not of laurel or smoke. Not even of blood. Though that lingers at the edge of things, but of warmth. Skin, wine, goose fat. The kind of quiet heaviness that follows crisis. You move slowly now, not because you're tired though you are, but because speed is no longer needed. You rinse your hands in the basin of warm salt water, using a linen cloth that's been soaking for hours. The water is cloudy. The salt leaves a faint crust on your fingers. You don't mind. It's familiar. Roman antiseptic in its own strange way. Not perfect. Not sterile, but better than nothing. From your toolkit, you remove a small terracotta jar, its lid sealed with wax and string. You break it open. Inside is a dense, greasy salve of goose fat and pine resin. Thick, yellowish, smells like an old forest and a butcher's shop. You scoop out a bit with your finger and rub it gently onto the mother's torn skin. She flinches but doesn't cry out. The salve is for healing, for keeping the skin soft as it mends, for keeping out infection. Whether it truly works, no one agrees. Historians still argue about the recipe. Some versions include figs, others ash from burned snail shells. You stick with goose fat. It's always done the job. You place a cool compress on her inner thighs, soaked in mallow root infusion. A trick you picked up from an old herbalist with one eye and a mean sense of humor. He swore mallow soothed everything from burns to bruises to bruised egos. You don't doubt it. As she rests, you turn to your next patient. The baby. The little one lies wrapped like a burrito in soft wool, eyes closed, lips twitching in sleep. But you know better than to be lulled by a quiet baby. So you unwrap him gently, exposing the tiny, wrinkled limbs, the soft skull still shaped like a melon pressed too long against a window. You take a moment to examine him. The fingers, the toes, the tongue, You count them quietly, not just because it's a habit, but because once, long ago, you didn't. And you still remember the look on that mother's face when she found out before you did. You check the navel, clean and tied with a double knot of woolen thread. No signs of infection, no redness. You dab the stump with a bit of wine, not the fancy kind, just what's left in the basin. Then you coat the area in a thin smear of honey and thyme paste. Made earlier in the day and kept in a shell box, it smells like medicine should. Sharp, sweet, and slightly ridiculous. Then comes the bath. You warm a fresh bowl of water, add a pinch of sea salt, a sprig of lavender, and just enough olive oil to give it that slippery shimmer. The baby flinches at first, but soon melts into your hands. You cradle him like he's made of bread dough, lifting gently, pouring water over his back from a tiny clay ladle shaped like a bird. Some midwives swear by wine baths for strength. Others say rose water invites the favor of Venus. You go by smell, and this baby smells clean, sleepy, and vaguely herbal. Success. You dry him in a linen square warmed by the fire, then dab a bit of crushed frankincense onto his tiny forehead. Not because you're religious, necessarily, but because every baby deserves one small blessing and one soft lie. So you lean down and whisper, "You're going to be just fine, little emperor." Even if his future holds only farm work and fig trees, let him believe, for a moment, that life bends toward greatness. In the corner, the mother stirs. You place the baby in her arms. She clutches him like an anchor. There are no grand speeches, no swelling music, just the quiet clink of bronze tools as you put them back into their worn leather pouch. A little beeswax here, a bit of wool tucked there. You wrap the goose fat salve in linen. You tie the scroll of birth notes and tuck it beside your charms. Outside, a rooster crows confused, probably, but insistent. Dawn is somewhere on the horizon, and with it comes the neighbors, the gossip, and the first bowl of lentil stew. But in here, there is stillness. You sit back against the wall for a moment, hands in your lap, and feel the dried goose fat under your nails, the soft ache in your spine, and the faint aroma of salt and thyme on your sleeves. You close your eyes for just a second, then open them again, because you've got to go clean the stool. You squat beside the stool again, cloth in hand, staring at the darkened wood like it's an old friend who's just seen too much. The birthing stool is still warm from the body it held. You soak your rag in a bowl of rosemary water and begin to wipe it clean, slowly, with care, not out of reverence exactly, but out of habit. Every tool deserves a proper send-off after it's helped carry someone through pain and into life. The sister comes over and watches silently. She offers to help. You shake your head. You've learned over the years that no one else really wants to do this part, not the scrubbing, the rinsing, the removal of little bits of fluid and thread that never quite behaves. But you don't mind. It's where the thinking happens. The baby is quiet. The mother is asleep. And for a few short minutes, the world stops asking anything from you until you remember the bath bowl still needs cleaning too. You lift it, a wide, low-rimmed copper basin, still scented faintly with lavender and spiced wine. Romans believed a baby's first bath could shape its destiny. Warm water softened the skin, sure, but it also opened the spirit to whatever blessings were floating in the air. You've seen baths with rose petals, crushed sage, even a dash of saffron from a wealthy merchant once, though. The mother nearly fainted at the price. But the strangest one, a senator's wife insisted her child be bathed in water infused with crushed pearls, said it would bring a luminescent soul. You smiled, nodded, and dumped half the mix behind the curtain. No need to waste good pearl on a fussy newborn with a full head of hair and lungs like a theater actor. Tonight, it was simple. Sea salt, lavender, and a drop of oil. Enough to clean, enough to comfort. Now it's back to the toolkit, which sits open on the floor like a half-read book. You begin putting things away in their proper pouches. Bronze clamps, cotton-wrapped needles, a dull spoon you use for clearing mucus from tiny throats. Each has its spot, but you pause over one particular item, a thin reed tube capped in ivory. Not many midwives carry this. It's used for clearing a baby's airway when they come out quiet. You've used it 3 times. It worked once. The other times, you don't like to remember. You clean it anyway, slowly, reverently, because tools remember, even when you try to forget. Then comes the salt pouch, not for wounds, but for sprinkling beneath the bed. Roman superstition says salt wards off evil spirits, especially those jealous of new life. You shake a little under the mattress, not because you believe in spirits, but because you've seen what happens when others do, and you'd rather not tempt fate. There's a second bowl too, this one deeper, glazed clay, filled with warm olive oil and herbs. It's for rubbing the baby's limbs. Romans thought strong, oily skin meant a stronger child. You used to think it was just indulgent. Then you saw a baby wrapped too tight, too dry, and the rash it left behind. So you rub knees, elbows, tiny ankles. The scent of bay leaf and marjoram lingers on your hands. The mother mumbles something in her sleep. Her hands never leave the baby. And you finally sit. You rest your back against the wall. Toolkit closed, cloths folded in a neat stack beside you. The fire is mostly embers now, glowing softly like the inside of an apricot. You sip from a cup someone left for you. Lukewarm barley tea with a hint of honey. You pretend it's better than it is. Historians still argue whether midwives were seen as respected professionals or just tolerated necessities. It depended on the city, the season, and whether your last birth ended well. But in this quiet moment, with a sleeping mother and a breathing child, you feel something closer to sacred than scientific. You stare at the toolkit, worn leather fraying at the edges, stitched together with your own hand. After too many years on the road, it doesn't sparkle, it doesn't impress. But every notch, every stain, every tiny dent in the bronze tells a story no scroll could ever teach. And tomorrow, you'll carry it all again into another house, another room, another set of cries. The room smells different now, not of laurel or smoke, not even of blood though. That lingers at the edge of things, but of warmth, skin, wine, goose fat, the kind of quiet heaviness that follows crisis. You move slowly now, not because you're tired though you are, but because speed is no longer needed. You rinse your hands in the basin of warm salt water, using a linen cloth that's been soaking for hours. The water is cloudy. The salt leaves a faint crust on your fingers. You don't mind. It's familiar. Roman antiseptic in its own strange way. Not perfect, not sterile, but better than nothing. From your toolkit, you remove a small terracotta jar, its lid sealed with wax and string. You break it open. Inside is a dense, greasy salve of goose fat and pine resin. Thick, yellowish, smells like an old forest and a butcher's shop. You scoop out a bit with your finger and rub it gently onto the mother's torn skin. She flinches but doesn't cry out. The salve is for healing, for keeping the skin soft as it mends, for keeping out infection. Whether it truly works, no one agrees. Historians still argue about the recipe. Some versions include figs, others ash from burned snail shells. You stick with goose fat. It's always done the job. You place a cool compress on her inner thighs, soaked in mallow root infusion. A trick you picked up from an old herbalist with one eye and a mean sense of humor. He swore mallow soothed everything from burns to bruises to bruised egos. You don't doubt it. As she rests, you turn to your next patient. The baby, the little one, lies wrapped like a burrito in soft wool, eyes closed, lips twitching in sleep. But you know better than to be lulled by a quiet baby, so you unwrap him gently, exposing the tiny wrinkled limbs, the soft skull still shaped like a melon pressed too long against a window. You take a moment to examine him, the fingers, the toes, the tongue. You count them quietly, not just because it's a habit, but because once, long ago, you didn't, and you still remember the look on that mother's face when she found out before you did. You check the navel, clean and tied with a double knot of woolen thread. No signs of infection, no redness. You dab the stump with a bit of wine. Not the fancy kind, just what's left in the basin. Then you coat the area in a thin smear of honey and thyme paste, made earlier in the day and kept in a shell box. It smells like medicine should. Sharp, sweet, and slightly ridiculous. Then comes the bath. You warm a fresh bowl of water, add a pinch of sea salt, a sprig of lavender, and just enough olive oil to give it that slippery shimmer. The baby flinches at first, but soon melts into your hands. You cradle him like he's made of bread dough, lifting gently, pouring water over his back from a tiny clay ladle shaped like a bird. Some midwives swear by wine baths for strength. Others say rose water invites the favor of Venus. You go by smell, and this baby smells clean, sleepy, and vaguely herbal. Success. You dry him in a linen square warmed by the fire. Then dab a bit of crushed frankincense onto his tiny forehead. Not because you're religious, necessarily, but because every baby deserves one small blessing and one soft lie. So you lean down and whisper, "You're going to be just fine. Little Emperor." Even if his future holds only farm work and fig trees, let him believe. For a moment, that life bends toward greatness. In the corner, the mother stirs. You place the baby in her arms. She clutches him like an anchor. There are no grand speeches, no swelling music, just the quiet clink of bronze tools as you put them back into their worn leather pouch. A little beeswax here, a bit of wool tucked there. You wrap the goose fat salve in linen. You tie the scroll of birth notes and tuck it beside your charms. Outside, a rooster crows confused. Probably, but insistent. Dawn is somewhere on the horizon, and with it comes the neighbors, the gossip, and the first bowl of lentil stew. But in here, there is stillness. You sit back against the wall for a moment, hands in your lap, and feel the dried goose fat under your nails, the soft ache in your spine, and the faint aroma of salt and thyme on your sleeves. You close your eyes for just a second, then open them again, because you've got to go clean the stool. You haul the birthing stool out into the courtyard while the sky is still that soft, sleep-drunk blue. It's heavier than it looks, probably soaked through by now, but you've lifted worse. The legs scrape faintly against the tiled floor as you move, and for a second, you feel every mile your knees have walked inside this job. You rest it by the fountain and draw water with a ceramic jug, letting the stream splash over the wood, lifting blood, sweat, and herbs in lazy swirls. You scrub with a stiff, bristled brush horsehair, tied by hand, then tilt the stool on its side to dry in the sun. The stain won't come out. It never does. The stool tells its own stories, and every mark is another child who screamed their way into the world. With the stool drying, you return to your kit. There's one more ritual left: the first bath. You prepare it slowly, methodically. A shallow bronze basin is filled with lukewarm water. Into it, you pour a dash of wine, not the good stuff, just what's left in the cup that no one drank. Then a pinch of sea salt and a few drops of rose oil, saved for this very moment. You test the temperature with the inside of your wrist. Just right, like a warm sigh. You call gently to the mother and lift the baby from her arms. He fusses, more out of principle than distress. You smile. That's a good sign. A loud baby lives longer than a quiet one. The aunt hovers nervously as you lower him into the basin. The baby's skin meets the water, and his tiny face scrunches, then relaxes. His fists open like flowers. His breathing slows. You cup water in your hand and pour it down his back in soft waves, watching as the salt and wine mix into a faint, milky film. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives bathed newborns in wine for religious reasons, antiseptic qualities, or just tradition. The truth is, probably all three. You don't ask anymore. You just pour and whisper, and yes, you whisper. Not to the baby, to the water. You say, "Take what you must, leave what we need." A phrase you learned as a girl. No one explained it. No one had to. The water remembers. After the bath, you pat him dry with warmed linen. You rub a dab of poppy seed oil on his chest, not enough to sedate, just to calm. The scent is musky, familiar, like sleep woven into silk. You swaddle him again and tuck a small charm beneath the wrap. Just a sliver of coral, wrapped in red thread. For protection, coral absorbs the evil eye. They say coral cracks when danger is near. You've seen it happen once. You don't joke about it anymore. Back inside, the mother is finally resting, her face pale but peaceful. You place the baby beside her and adjust the wool around both, skin to skin, the way it's always been done. The way it should be. You lean against the doorframe for a moment and look around. The birth room has transformed. Earlier, it was all panic and heat. Now it's quiet. The coals have gone cold. The herbs hang limply from their hooks. The amulets on the walls brass fish, painted eyes. A crude carving of Fortuna stare back without blinking. You gather your things. The wine basin goes back in its sack. The rose oil vial is wrapped in felt. The brush, the blade, the used linens all sorted into their places. You clean the obsidian with extra care. Always. You wrap it last. And just before you leave, you do one final thing. You wet your fingers with the last of the salt water and dab 3 dots forehead, chest, foot on the baby. Then one more on the mother's wrist. Not a blessing, not exactly. Just a reminder that they were seen, that someone bore witness, that someone stayed long enough to clean the stool. Outside, the sun is finally rising. Another birth waits in 2 streets over. The woman's name is Julia, first child. Nervous. You sigh, adjust your sash, and whisper to yourself, let's hope this one cries too. You step into the next house before mid-morning. Julia, the new mother-to-be, is younger than the last barely 16, wide-eyed, and clinging to a cracked terracotta figurine of Venus like it might bite the pain in half. She's been laboring since dawn. Her mother paces in tight circles around the room, and her husband has conveniently gone to fetch bread. He'll likely return after everything is over. You don't judge. Some men just aren't built to hear screaming from someone they love. You wash your hands again in warmed wine and vinegar. The room already smells like lavender and fear. The incense is too strong. You crack a window. Your toolkit hits the floor with a familiar thump, half leather, half bronze, all business. You don't speak yet, just assess. Her face, her breathing, her knees clamped tightly together, like she can still back out of this. You smile gently, settle onto a stool beside her, and let her grip your wrist as the next contraction rolls through. This one will be hard. You know it. You feel it in the timing, the sweat, the silence between her moans. So you prepare for what you always hope won't happen. A baby that doesn't breathe right away. You set aside your crushed marjoram pouch and herb bundle tied with red silk, used to awaken sluggish infants. Next to it, a strip of clean linen, a jar of warm oil, and a soft-bristled brush, not to scrub. Never that, but to tickle the soles of the baby's feet, should they emerge quiet. You've coaxed life with less. And finally, in the inner pocket of your sash, a tiny carved bone whistle, barely a breath of sound, but sometimes just enough. Julia pushes hard. Her scream rattles the oil lamp on the shelf. You guide her onto the stool, support her thighs, whisper the same phrases you've said 100 times, but with new gentleness each time. You're not alone. You're not breaking. You're just opening. Then comes the moment. The baby slides into your hands a good size. Good color, but too quiet. Limbs curled tightly. No wailing. No breath. Julia's mother gasps. You don't? You're already at work. You rub the child's chest with olive oil warmed in your palm. You flick the feet gently. Still nothing. You lean closer. Press your ear to the chest. There, yes, faint, but real. You whisper again. Not words, just rhythm. A pulse of breath near the baby's ear. Then you raise the marjoram to the nose. A soft brush of scent. The baby stirs, then wails. A short, sharp protest. Like being born was the rudest surprise of the year. You exhale. Not dramatically, just as habit. And this time, you smile fully. You hand the child to the grandmother, who sobs with gratitude. You can barely hear her over the ringing in your ears, but her arms shake as she cradles the baby like a sacred flame. Historians still argue over how Roman midwives responded to non-breathing infants, whether they had a systematic approach or relied entirely on charms and luck. But you know better. There's a dance to the crisis, a practice sequence of pressure, scent, and silence. And sometimes, if all else fails, there's the whisper. You wipe your hands, your knees hurt. Julia is slumped back, smiling through tears. The baby, finally fussing with tiny hands, is being swaddled in borrowed wool. You sit by the fire and set down your bone whistle. No one saw you use it, but it was there. That's enough. And then, because no one asked, but you do it anyway, you begin humming again, just under your breath. A cradle song from your own childhood, the kind with no real words, just breath and rhythm and the promise that someone is watching over you. even if they're crouched under a stool holding a goose fat cloth in one hand and fate in the other. You stay until both mother and baby sleep. Then, you repack your kit, slowly, one by one, tools wrapped, herbs tied, whistle tucked back where it belongs. And on your way out, you whisper one last line not for them, but for you. Stay loud, little one. You don't make it home that night. Someone stops you in the alley, breathless and red-eyed, begging for help. Another labor, another room. You almost want to laugh, but you don't. You nod, follow, and soon you're back in a place that smells of sweat, lamp oil, and desperation. But this one's different. The labor has stalled. The mother is weak. She's been at it since yesterday, and her pulse is fluttery. You touch her wrist too fast, too thin. You listen to her belly. No movement. The air turns thick. You ask for quiet. The room empties. You kneel beside her and press your hand gently to her lower abdomen. Nothing. Then, barely a kick. Faint. Like a question mark curling at the end of a dying sentence. You move quickly. From your toolkit, you draw the smallest of your hooks, bronze. Polished. Curved like a crescent moon. Not sharp, just persuasive. You slide your fingers in, murmuring gently, guiding, adjusting. This is the part you never talk about over dinner. It's messy, awkward, humbling. The baby is turned sideways. That's why nothing's progressing. You coax, reposition, wait for a contraction. Nothing. You massage the belly, circular motions, soft pressure. You smear on warm goose fat and add a few drops of bitter orange oil, one of those old trader remedies said to wake the womb. You don't know if it really does, but the smell alone could rouse a ghost. Finally. Movement. She moans. You reach. The head turns. Not fully, but enough. Enough to bring the baby out without force. And then comes the flood. The baby slides out, fast and wet, limbs tangled, but not crying. This time, you don't reach for the marjoram. You tap the soles, hard, still nothing. You lift the child, hold him close, breathe near his face. You whisper again, the way your teacher once whispered to a stillborn twin in a barn behind a tavern. You don't have to stay, but if you do speak now, a cough, a gurgle, then a scream. It's enough. It's always just enough. You swaddle the child quickly and return him to the mother's chest, who's half awake and weeping without realizing. You place her hand on his back and whisper the word she needs to hear more than anything. Here! But the bleeding starts almost immediately. She's too soft, too spent. You press a wool pad between her legs, already soaked before you count to 5. You pull another from your pouch, this one smeared with a paste of ground fennel and vinegar-soaked sage. Press again. You tie the thigh strap. You press harder. You whisper again. You hum. You pray to gods you forgot the names of. And slowly, like a pot cooling on the hearth, the blood slows. You don't speak. You just sit there for a long time. Your hands sticky, your sleeves rolled, your knees numb. You stay still, watching the rise and fall of 2 breathing chests. You don't move until the mother's lips twitch into the faintest smile. Only then do you reach for your bag and begin to clean. You wipe your tools with wine and linen, sharpening one blade just enough to keep the edge smooth. You rewrap the crooked bronze hook in its velvet cloth. You fold each wool compress into a tight square and place them in a jar for washing later. And then you reach for the charcoal stick. You always leave something behind. Just above the doorframe, you sketch a small symbol, a spiral inside a circle. It's nothing, really, an old scribble from your hometown, but it means you are safe now. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives marked homes they worked in, or if such marks were protective, ritualistic, or purely emotional. You could answer them, but some things are better left between you and the doorframe. You step out into the night. The stars are just starting to fade behind the rooftops. Your arms ache. Your head throbs, but your kit is packed, and the baby screamed. That's enough. You wake late the next day on someone's stone bench with a folded cloak for a pillow and a bread roll crumbling in your lap. A gift. Probably. You don't remember who left it. It's stale and rough on your teeth. But you chew it anyway, because hunger is not something you can afford to be picky about. Not in this work. You stretch your shoulders, stiff from sleeping upright. Your fingers ache from gripping tools for too long, and your knees feel like they've aged 10 years overnight. You dust the crumb from your tunic and sling the toolkit across your shoulder again. Someone down the street has started a birth song. Not for labor this time, it's for mourning. You pause for a moment, just enough to note the tune. Then you walk the other way. Your next house is a wealthy one. Mosaic floors, marble counters, polished bronze censers shaped like dolphins. You step inside and your sandals don't even scuff the tile. A house this clean means one thing. They expect no mess, which is laughable. Of course, the laboring woman lies on a proper bed, soft and elevated, draped in silks that someone will probably burn after this. Her hair is perfectly arranged, her jewelry still on. Her expression, however, is that of someone chewing rocks. You don't get a warm welcome here. Just a nod from the house steward and a tight-lipped acknowledgement from the mother-in-law, who's sitting in the corner like she's here for a tribunal. You unpack your tools, slowly, deliberately. You don't perform, but you do show. The hooks, the flasks, the compresses, everything placed with quiet assurance. Then, gently, you ask everyone to leave. The mother-in-law refuses, so you begin humming, quietly, a song from the lower districts, a lullaby. The kind that drives out tension with awkwardness. She huffs and leaves. Now it's just you and the woman in labor, who clutches the bed frame with trembling hands. Her back arches with every contraction. You roll up your sleeves and begin the process of easing her down, not physically, but emotionally. You press warm cloths to her belly. You drizzle a mixture of crushed poppy seeds and honey onto her tongue. Not enough to dull the pain completely, just enough to soften the edges. This is the kind of birth that demands endurance. Hours pass. You rotate compresses, refresh the mallow root tea, and occasionally tilt the window shutter to adjust the light. The baby isn't in distress, but neither is it in a rush. So you wait, and during those long moments between contractions, the mother begins to talk about her fears, her marriage, how her first child was taken too soon. You don't speak much, just listen. That's part of the work. 2. Then, the pain returns sharply. She bites down on her knuckles. You kneel and prepare for delivery. Everything is progressing. The child comes, not too fast, not too slow, but the shoulders stick, not entirely just enough to freeze your spine for a breath. You reposition. You reach for your goose fat salve, rub it along your palms, and gently guide the shoulder forward, rotating just enough. It works. The baby slides free, wet, squalling, angry to be here. You smile. Then you look at the mother and realize she's gone completely still. No breath. You slap her cheek lightly. Nothing. You call her name. Still nothing. Panic tries to rise, but you press it down. You grab a cloth soaked in mint vinegar, wave it under her nose. You lift her head. You press at the pulse point on her neck. There. Faint, but it's there. You order a maid to bring broth. You keep her upright. Slowly, her breath returns. When her eyes open, she sees the baby first. She starts crying immediately. And you let yourself sit back on the floor, just for a second, and let out a breath that shakes. You clean up quietly. The baby is fed. The mother sips broth. The mother-in-law returns, sees the healthy child, and suddenly adores you. Of course, she offers coins. You refuse. Instead, you ask for the dolphin censer in the corner, not because you need it, just because it makes you smile. You leave with the censer tucked under your arm. The poppy honey mixture still sticks to your fingers, and the woman's crying that sound stays in your ears long after the mosaic fades beneath your feet. You sit under an awning, polishing your tools with a piece of boiled linen when a shadow falls across your lap. It's her, a woman you helped 2 years ago, Marcia, strong as a mule and just as stubborn. She's carrying a basket of figs in one hand, a toddler in the other, and dragging her new husband behind her like a reluctant goat. She grins when she sees you. I told him I wouldn't marry him unless you blessed the next one. She laughs, pressing the basket into your lap. You take the figs, sweet, warm. You haven't eaten in hours, maybe days, depending on how you measure time during back-to-back births. Then Marcia adds, quieter now. You remember my sister, Livia? She needs help, but she's scared. She thinks it's her fault that the baby hasn't come. You close your eyes for a beat. You know this feeling too well. You gather your kit, sling it back over your shoulder. and follow. Livia lives in a cramped upper-floor apartment above a potter's stall. The stairs creak. The air is heavy with kiln smoke and basil. Inside, she lies curled on a straw mattress, soaked in sweat and shame. She barely meets your eyes. You sit beside her and take her hand. It's cold, shaking. She thinks she's cursed. Marcia whispers behind you. You nod slowly, then unpack your most unscientific pouch. The one with the things no one believes in but everyone asks for. You pull out a dried mouse foot, a bundle of fennel tied with a copper thread, and a carved wooden disc with a spiral and a dot in the center. Livia's eyes widen. You place the disc in her palm, close her fingers around it, and say, "This isn't for luck, it's for balance. The world's a wheel, and you've just hit the bump. That's all." You don't always say these things, but sometimes people need the illusion of control more than the truth. As you boil water for compresses, you notice the wall beside her bed is etched with tiny scratch marks 4 in a row, over and over. Not tally marks, not for days or contractions. They look ritualistic. You ask gently. She explains, almost whispering, "For every child that left me." You stop stirring. Then you kneel by the wall and make a 5th mark yourself. No more leaving. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives were spiritual guides or just practical technicians. The truth lives somewhere in the space between goose fat and ghost stories. You've seen the power of belief stiffen a woman's spine when medicine couldn't touch her pain. You apply a compress of fig leaf soaked in vinegar, place a cold brass coin between her palms, and murmur an old phrase. Cold metal draws the curse out. Do you believe it? Maybe not. But she does. The birth takes hours. The baby is breech. You work in silence, gently maneuvering, whispering, using your curved hook with infinite patience. No force, just rhythm. You coax the child into turning. You press a fist against her lower belly, slow and steady, aligning pressure and breath, and then release. The baby slips free, still, quiet, but warm. You rub the back, flick the feet. No sound. Then you pinch the base of the spine, the way your teacher once did during a thunderstorm in a barn in Cumae. A sharp cry, thin but growing. The room floods with sound. You place the baby on Livia's chest, and she doesn't cry. She just curls her arms around the child like she's reclaiming something stolen. You don't move for a long time. When you do, your knees crack again. You clean up the blood-soaked linens, whispering an apology to the gods of vinegar and wool for how much you're asking of them lately. Before you leave, Livia takes your hand. She doesn't say thank you. She just says, "Please don't forget her name." You nod. Then you scratch one more mark on the walls, but this time, you draw a circle around it. You walk home under a pale crescent moon, feet swollen, eyelids heavy, fingers stained with fig leaf and old blood. Your toolkit swings against your hip like a second heartbeat. You promise yourself you'll sleep, but you don't, because at your door, a boy is waiting barefoot, dust-covered, holding his little sister's hand. "Mama's torn," he says. She won't stop shaking. You don't ask questions. You follow. The house is small, cramped, warm in the wrong ways. Inside, the mother lies curled, face gray, breathing shallow. The baby is on a reed mat, crying, healthy. That much, at least, is done. But the mother, you kneel beside her, place 2 fingers on her neck. The pulse is thready. Her thighs are slick with blood that's gone too dark. You lift the linen sheet it's soaked through, and underneath, there's a deep tear, jagged and messy. Likely happened during the final push. No one knew what to do. They just bundled her up and hoped. You don't flinch. You reach for your vinegar jar, your boiled wool, and your thread horsehair, boiled for hours in wine and salt. It's thick, crude, but strong. You sterilize the wound as best you can. She moans weakly but doesn't resist. Her hands twitch when the first stitch goes in. You're not done yet. You whisper, as much to yourself as to her. Each stitch is slow, deliberate. You hold your breath with every pass of the needle. You remember the words of your old teacher, "A stitch too shallow, and the pain remains. A stitch too deep, and the body turns on itself." You repeat that rhythm silently as you work. The little girl stands beside you, watching. You offer her a strip of fig bark to chew a distraction. She takes it with wide, worried eyes. Once the stitching is done, you press a poultice of honey, myrrh, and rosemary over the wound. It smells sharp, but you've seen what it can do. It's your last defense against infection, a fringe concoction, you admit, but it's saved lives more often than the physician's cold iron tools. You change the linens. You lift the mother's head. You whisper small things into her ear. There's warm broth waiting. Your son is outside, pacing. She's beautiful. You did it. Her eyelids flicker. Then a whisper. You're not a goddess, are you? You laugh softly, so as not to wake the fever. No, you say. Goddesses don't clean blood off floors. You don't leave right away. You stay. Watch her chest rise and falls. Watch her hand twitch. Then settle. You hand the baby back, tucked in warm cloth, and feel a calm wash over the room. But outside, the neighbors are whispering, not praise, suspicion. You hear snatches of it as you rinse your tools at the courtyard basin. She didn't cry until the midwife arrived. There was a charm in her hand, swear by Jupiter. My cousin swears she carries bones in that pouch. You've heard it all before. When a birth goes wrong, it's fate. When it goes right, it's suspicious. Historians still argue whether Roman midwives were respected or feared, whether their knowledge elevated them or painted them as witches. The answer lies in the glances you collect leaving houses at dusk. You finish cleaning your bone needle, the one reserved for worst-case tears. You wrap it in a linen square, twice folded, and return it to your kit. You don't defend yourself, because you know what they really fear isn't your tools. It's the fact that you walk in when things fall apart and walk out with someone still breathing. You sling the kit over your shoulder and you disappear into the dark again. By the time you reach the next home, you can feel it in your back, the slow, grinding ache of too many hours spent on your knees, too many nights without sleep, too many births that made you question the shape of mercy. But this house is quiet. Too quiet. The mother has already passed. She bled out before anyone could fetch you. The baby lives. Barely. He lies in a reed basket, wrapped in cloth that smells of soot and old milk. His breathing is shallow, lips tinged blue. You sit beside him and don't speak for a long time. There are no gods to bargain with, just the baby, the silence, and your hands. You pull your kit close, not the outer pockets, the hidden one. The one no one asks about unless they're desperate. Inside is your little bottle of goat's milk, smoked, boiled, and strained with crushed dates and a pinch of powdered cumin. It's not perfect, but it's what you've got. You fill a dropper made from a hollow fig stem, trimmed just right, and trickle a few drops between the baby's lips. He swallows, barely, but he does, and you keep going. Every few minutes, just enough to keep the fire lit. There's no family around. The father is off fighting with the Legion. The neighbors dropped the baby off like an unwanted fig, then scurried back into their clean, childless homes. So you stay. You set up near the window where the air moves. You rub the baby's feet with garlic oil, a fringe remedy meant to pull breath from the earth. Historians still debate whether these rituals were old wives' tales or coded forms of early resuscitation. You don't argue anymore. You just rub in slow, steady circles. The baby sleeps. His color returns. The tiniest whimper leaks from his throat like a promise. You dig through your pouch and find something you rarely use. Your traveling pendant, carved from alabaster, shaped like an eye inside a circle. You place it above the basket, not to ward off spirits, exactly, but to remind them that someone is watching. The days blur after that. You check in daily, feed him, rock him, smuggle in wet wool for diapers and mint leaf bundles to mask the smell. The neighbors pretend they don't see you, but every so often, someone leaves something at the door: a boiled egg, a string of dried olives, a scrap of clean cloth. You take them all, silently. By the third week, the baby has a name. You call him Tiro, though no one's confirmed it. The name just feels right, short, round, stubborn, like his fists when he curls them up after feeding. By week 5, you start training a local girl to watch him. Her name's Nona. She's 12, already been scolded for asking too many questions. You like her instantly. You teach her how to mix the milk right, how to check breathing, how to hold the baby so his stomach doesn't twist. She picks it up faster than you did. One day, she asks if the baby remembers his mother. You pause, then answer, no, but he remembers being held. Before you leave, you give her your backup toolkit. the one with the missing clasp and the chipped obsidian blade. She opens it like it's gold. "Will he live?" she asks. You nod. If you keep showing up. As you walk away, she hums a lullaby you'd forgotten you even taught her. And for once, you don't feel heavy. You feel replaced. In the best way. You're home for less than a day before someone knocks. Not to call you to a birth, for once, but to ask for advice. A girl, barely 13, thin as a rush reed, clutching a scroll to her chest like it's a shield. She says she wants to be a midwife. You raise an eyebrow. You sure? She nods. Doesn't blink. So you make tea fennel and dried apple, warm and just sweet enough, and sit her down in the courtyard. Your bones protest, your knees click, but something in you straightens, and you tell her the truth. Not the pretty version, the real one. You tell her how no one claps when you save a life, but everyone gossips when something goes wrong. How you'll be accused of witchcraft one day, and begged for a miracle the next. How your hands will shake the first time you touch someone who's dying, and how they'll shake even harder the first time you save them. She listens, quiet and still, eyes wide. Then she pulls out the scroll. It's handwritten, sloppy, unfinished. But it's a manual, her attempt at gathering everything she's learned from watching her aunt deliver one baby in a barn. You scan it. It's half Galen, half superstition, and the rest is just raw guesswork. You love it instantly. So you show her yours. Your real handbook, not the official one. Not the public scroll with tidy ink and respectable margins. The other one, the bundle of wax tablets and stitched parchment you've carried for years. The one with smudges, tea stains, and little drawings of tools no longer made. You untie the cord and flip it open. One page says, "If the head is stuck, hum softly." Another, "Don't argue with old women during labor. Let them have their garlic." And on the inside cover, "Never trust a senator's wife. She'll blame the goat before she blames her son." The girl laughs at that. You like her laugh, nervous, but honest. She asks about pain relief. So you show her the old recipe you copied from an Alexandrian trader, crushed willow bark boiled with dates and a scrap of parchment ash. You explain how to rub it onto the back. How it's not perfect, but better than poppy for long labors. She asks how to cut the cord without shaking. You smile. You will shake. You say, "Do it anyway." She stays all afternoon. Takes notes, sketches your tools, asks the kind of questions that make you remember why you never stopped doing this work. Even when the city turned against you, even when your own family called you the woman who smells like afterbirth and ghosts. Before she leaves, you give her one thing, your extra wax tablet. Blank, write what you learn. You say, not what they tell you to learn. Historians still debate whether Roman midwives formally trained apprentices or simply passed knowledge through oral tradition. You know it was both, and neither. Some women shared everything. Others guarded secrets tighter than temple priests. You've lived long enough to know that a secret kept dies with you. So you pass yours on. She promises to return next week. You believe her. Before she leaves, she turns back and asks, "Do you ever forget their faces?" You close your eyes. No, but some days, you only remember the hands. She nods like she understands. Maybe she does. Maybe she will. When she's gone, you sit with your handbook in your lap, fingers tracing the ink until it smears, and you begin to write a new line. Teach the girl. She sees what others ignore. You start seeing her everywhere. The girl, you still don't know her full name, only that her father shoed horses and her mother sold basil from under the aqueduct. But she's always just there, waiting, watching, learning. You bring her to quiet births first, second children, older mothers, ones with fewer surprises. She observes, taking notes with that stubby charcoal stick you gave her, pressing it into wax, like she's carving a map. She never interrupts, but you see her lips move silently, repeating everything you say. One morning, a woman comes in laboring early. 2 months too soon. The baby will not survive. You know it. Before your hands even touch her belly, but the mother is insistent. She believes she heard a god speak to her in a dream. The girl is with you. She watches as you prepare the tools. Not to save, but to comfort. You fold linen for warmth, not containment. You brew anise tea with thyme and a hint of crushed clove. Not because it'll stop the labor, but because it might soften the memory. And when the baby is born silent, small, blue, you do not flinch. You wrap it gently. You place it in the mother's arms. You don't speak. The girl holds the mother's hand, doesn't look away. Later, when you ask how she's feeling, she says, cold behind the eyes. You nod. That's the right answer. Because there are things this job demands that can't be taught in ink or repetition, like how to close someone's fingers around grief so it doesn't fall apart. You teach her how to bury the afterbirth when no family claims it, which herbs to burn so the neighbors don't ask questions, which prayers work when you don't believe in any gods, but still whisper something just in case. You also show her the trick of lying convincingly to husbands, a skill more vital than stitching. She's resting well. You say, even when she isn't. She's strong. You insist. Even when she's bleeding, everything went fine. You promise. While washing blood out of your tunic, historians still wonder whether Roman midwives served as doctors or deceivers, whether they offered clinical care or sold comfort wrapped in folklore and soft voices. You know the answer. Both. The girl starts making her own tools. A bone spoon carved from leftover goat shank. A hook filed down from scrap bronze she scavenged behind the bathhouse. Crude, but thoughtful. She understands the rhythm of this work now. Prepare. Listen. Act. Disappear. She also begins to hum. Not your song, her own. Softer. Like wind through a fig tree. She hums while packing linen, while washing basins, while heating water. The first time a laboring woman says, her humming helped me, you pretend not to smile. Then one evening, she asks the question no one ever does. What happens when you die? You pause, stir the tea, look out the window. Then you'll know where I kept the second book. She tilts her head. There's a second. You nod. Slowly, it's buried under the kitchen tile, wrapped in waxed cloth. It contains things too sharp for training, stories too strange for scrolls. What to do when a woman starts screaming in Greek, though she was raised in Rome. What to do when a child is born smiling. What to do when you feel something leave the room before the baby arrives. It's not for now, but it's waiting, just like you once were. She leaves that night with your spare kettle, a bundle of dried bay leaves, and the confidence of someone not yet betrayed by her own hands. You watch her disappear down the alley, and for the first time in decades, you sit at your table and don't sharpen your blade, because now someone else will. You're old now, not in years exactly, but in joints, in the way your fingers tremble when you tie a knot, in the way your knees don't fully unbend when you rise from the floor, in the way people no longer summon you with urgency but with reverence, or sometimes with guilt. You still keep the toolkit beside your bed, just in case, but the leather's cracked, the bronze dulled, and the obsidian blade hasn't been used in months. You open it once a week now, mostly to clean, mostly to remember. One evening, someone knocks. You expect a request, a final favor, maybe a difficult labor out in the hills. Instead, it's her. The girl, no, not a girl anymore. She's grown into her voice. Her own tools hang from her belt, wrapped in dyed wool. Her hands are sure. She doesn't need you, but she brings something anyway. A bundle of scrolls. From the others, she says. They're writing it down. All of it. You sit together under the same fig tree where she once asked about stitching. She reads aloud the names of women you helped. Aurelia, Junia, Livia. Ones you remember, ones you don't. Some are written beside a star, some beside a small fish symbol, and then she reads one final name, yours, followed by a line you did not write. She stayed after the others left. Your throat closes. You don't speak because there's nothing left to teach. Instead, she gives you back one thing you'd forgotten. A cloth-wrapped bone whistle, your old one. The one you gave her when she first held a newborn and didn't panic. She presses it into your hand. Still works. She says, you nod, and sit quietly. That night, you finally close the toolkit for good. You tie the strap. You press your palm to the lid and whisper the last word you'll ever speak to it. Enough. You sleep deeply. And in the dreams that follow, every baby you ever caught is laughing. The walls are clean. The cloths are folded. The fire is warm. And outside, in the city you once stitched together one birth at a time, you hear singing, not mourning, not fear, just women, humming, working, living. And now, as the fire dims and the night pulls tighter around your shoulders, you let the noise fade. The tools are clean, the rooms are quiet, The children once cries and blood and breathless tension are grown now, or gone, or held in memory, in mark, in name. You sit with your back straight, but your eyes soft, looking at nothing in particular. There's no more to do, not tonight, not anymore. Just a gentle rocking of time, like a cradle someone forgot to stop. The aches you carry, your knees, your back, your soul don't vanish, but they soften. They become part of you, like calluses on your palms, or the way your thumb curves slightly from years of holding a needle just so. You remember the smells? Goose fat, salt water, crushed fig leaves. You remember the quiet moments before the first breath. And you remember the stories, not grand ones, not myths or wars, but the real ones. The ones whispered in labor, held in the dark, buried under tile and time, and you let them rest. Let them settle like dust on a warm floor. The city sleeps, and you now, just one heartbeat among thousands, breathe in slowly, then out, and again, until your body forgets to count. Until the world is only warmth, and the whisper of a lullaby you don't remember starting, but someone else somewhere keeps singing.